Filling out forms is super annoying, right? So what I wanted to do is automate the process of filling out forms. So I've been playing around with this idea of using large language models and structured outputs. So essentially it means that I can take some input like this that's unstructured with some phrase containing some information. I can copy it. I can come over here to this very fun app that I built with AI. I can click on this button and magic happens, and everything, the information from here is filled out here immediately. And I can do that with, in theory, any type of form. So I can come in job form, for example, and I can come into my test samples for job forms. I can copy this unstructured text. I can come over here, click on Smart Fill, and everything gets filled out, which is pretty awesome. Now, how does this work? And am I cheating? And let's take a look. So essentially what I'm doing here is, number one, I have a little Python script called app.py. And what this Python script is doing is essentially using a few Pydantic objects, like containing the information from the form that I want to fill out. Like in this case, contact has name, email, phone. So if I go here to my Pydantic object, I have contact information, name, email, phone, right? So that means that when I send some unstructured text to a large language model containing this object, what I can do is extract exactly the information that I want, and I can do that programmatically. So in theory, could be filling out forms as many times as I want from text that doesn't have all the discretized information organized there. And I do that for job information. And I was testing out other ideas like for making outlines for courses and so on and so forth. And what is the basic concept? The basic concept is you have a function that extracts that information from some raw input text. Like for example, in here, test samples contact form. I have a bunch of examples of unstructured text containing that information. This is kind of like an easy one. Its idea would be that you could do that with like very unstructured and like large text. And the concept would be to use that function extract contact information to extract that name, email, whatever it is, whatever the inputs are, with a very simple piece of code like this. I extract everything, and then what I do with that information that I extracted is I send that as input to each of the forms in the app. So to do that, what I do is I create some endpoints for a little GET request to get data, right? And what it will do is it will access the information from my clipboard, and then I will extract the information using those functions that we just saw. So the extract contact information and so on, that extracts from the clipboard. And then what happens is we take this, right, this endpoint that we created here. And what we do is when I go to my index.html, that is the HTML file for the little app that you were seeing, what's going on here is we're accessing that API endpoint right here, fetch, etc., etc., and that data is being is filling out that particular HTML. So this is kind of cheating, right? Because we have this very controlled access to the HTML app. So it's not like a real impressive, awesome AI filling out the forms the way that we would imagine it would happen, right? But this was like the first concept that I was kind of interested in, using LLMs and structured outputs to like easily fill out whatever I want in a screen. But the next level of this application that I was thinking about would be to use just a screenshot of whatever form I want, plus the unstructured text somewhere, and using some API calls to fancy multimodal LLMs to be able to fill out all these forms. What is the problem with that? The problem is that the AI would have to have some way of accessing the information, knowing where to fill out. Now, I don't know how this works because I'm not a web developer, so I don't know how it would work in terms of like parsing the HTML. I know that this is done somehow where you can do an add-on or a Chrome extension and then access directly the HTML and then replace and refill. And I know there's some issues with like parsing all of that. It's probably been fixed or it's probably been solved. I'm not sure. But I wanted to play around with the idea of, could I do this with just a screenshot of the browser, right? I mean, imagine when you use computer use or other applications that use the AI to control your browser, they're working off screenshots of your browser so that they can be as general as possible using only visual information, right? So I did a little fun experiment with this. So what I did is I created a little notebook here, and my workflow is pretty simple. I'm going to use Gemini 2.0 Flash to get coordinates for the locations of whatever I want in a screen. And the way that you can do that before going into writing code in a much more fun and interesting way is that you can go to Google AI Studio. And if you go to Google AI Studio, you can go down to Starter Apps, and then you can click on Spatial Understanding. And then you can upload an image that would be the screenshot of your browser. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to upload an image, and I'm going to upload the correct image for the screenshot of the thing I care about. And let's see, that would be some random Google form that I was trying to play around with, right? And it has like a few pointers. It has a question, email, address, phone number, comments. Great. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, show me the positions of the contact form inputs. I guess I can say that. And we're going to say 2D bounding boxes just to show you that it can actually locate these inputs correctly. I've never tried with this one, so we're trying for the first time. And I'm going to send that to Gemini, and hopefully what's going to happen is that it's going to be able to, there you go. It can access all of those points. So my answer, you see, as you can see, it gets right in on top of that input location. So it can really easily locate all of these in a screenshot right now. This has evolved quite a bit. Before, as a machine learning engineer, I would have to train a detection model to locate all these regions. But now you can do that by just doing one single API call to a model like Gemini, and you're good to go. So I looked at this and I was like, that's freaking awesome, right? Because now I can do that programmatically, writing some fancy Python code to take an image, process that image, and then write a fancy prompt that I actually extracted directly from Google AI Studio by clicking on Show Raw Prompt, which is awesome. I just copy this. And then I come back here, I put this here, and then I send that first input to Gemini, right? And what I get in return is something that looks more or less like this, right? Which is a JSON containing all the points with all the locations. And then I write a little function that parses those so that I can access the points and the labels. And once I've done that, I have this information organized. And then what I wanted to do was, okay, now I have to automate the process of inputting the text. And if you work with Python, you're probably going to use a library like PyAutoGUI that is pretty good enough to control things like the mouse, keyboard, etc. So I wrote a little function that essentially automates the process of placing things in the right points following just two inputs. So the points, which is the XY location of the forms in your window, and the text, which would be the labels that you want to write on top of those input forms. But there's a problem, right? The final problem I wanted to solve was, look, I would like this to be general. So the final boss of this problem would be to look at something like this contact form over here and have a model be able to take this screenshot. And what I would like to do is have a model that can take in this screenshot and essentially extract all the objects that the model identifies in this picture. So I want the model to be able to extract the abstract attributes from the form. So I would like a model to, like I'm using Claude for this, I want a model to be able to say, okay, so I see question, I see email, I see address, I see phone number, and I see comments. I already have one that can locate those things. And now what I wanted to do was, okay, I want one to map each of these input forms to an individual attribute where all of those as a group would be part of a big class called something. In this case, it would be something like class contact information, something like that, right? And I want it to be done with a single model, single API call. So I'm using Claude for this example. And the output of each would be, okay, so this would be the question attribute. And then we would have, so you have the question attribute, and then you have the email attribute, and then you have the address attribute, and so on and so forth. Because then with this information, containing the information of what are the elements from the input form that I would like to extract from some raw text. I'm going to use this, right, with the raw text. So I'm going to apply this to the raw text that we would have in our clipboard. So raw text from clipboard. Clipboard. So let me just make this bigger. There you go. And plus and I would combine all of that with the locations on the browser. So, I would take this and I would also combine it with the locations of each form in the browser. And that would be our little automation. So I did this with Gemini, right? So we already have this part done with Gemini. So Gemini is already taking care of this part. And I'm taking care of this part with Claude, which is what I'm about to show. And I tried experimenting to see if that would work, and that kind of worked sometimes, but it didn't work as well. But let's take a look. So this part is I'm extracting that Pydantic object with the individual forms as attributes. So I'm using Claude for that. What I do is I have a few functions to process the image and then extract some Python code from some raw input from Claude. I could have used structured outputs. This is just, I was writing code fast, so it's not a super big choice. And initially I was using this, initially I was using this function to save the outputs as an actual Python script apart. But on some conversations with Claude, I figured out there's a better way. So I'm not using this function anymore. But I am using this function, which calls the Anthropic API with the Claude model. It sends the image to the model, and what it takes back is the Pydantic object using this prompt that I wrote over here, which is create the appropriate Pydantic object with the attributes, la 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 la. I had to write down that it should not use this email string because that leads to an error with Pydantic email, which is a separate package you have to install, which was annoying. From this input forms, blah, 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 blah. So your code should be in these XML tags, Python and Python, which is how Claude was trained to perform using these XML tags for structured outputs, which is pretty awesome because it makes it super easy to get structured information from Claude. And essentially, I send that out, I get a response back, and then I wrote this function that loads whatever dynamic code is generated with Claude directly into the namespace of my script, so I can go straight into applying that with some other model. So for that, I use this function load dynamic model. I'm not 100% sure what this thing is doing. I generated this with Claude apart in the Claude desktop, or was it Cursor? I don't remember now. And but it works, and it's super cool. So now we take the image of the contact form, which should be a whole screen image of your contact form. I generate a Pydantic object. I was extracting the code before with this, but now, I still do that. And then I load the Pydantic module, and this is what I get. You see, the class is generated beautifully. Then what I do next is, and for that I'm using OpenAI because why not use 3 different APIs in the same notebook, right? So I'm using OpenAI to essentially parse whatever I get back parse the raw input from the clipboard. Sorry. This is parsing the raw input from the clipboard, and it uses the Pydantic object that we just generated dynamically with Claude. So I do that, and I get what I'm calling the form's inputs, all right? So look how cool this is. When I run this function on some random raw input that contains the necessary information, what I get in return is a little list containing all the information that I was going for, all right? So this is pretty cool because then I can use that to essentially try it out with a different model, with a different page. And upon a few experiments, it kind of worked sometimes, but it didn't work super well. Like, for example, if I was having a few issues mainly with locating stuff on the screen. So what I did to solve this problem of locating stuff on the screen is I started playing around with this location reference HTML that I generated with Cursor, which essentially is a little app that I have that was built after a few iterations. It's a pretty cool app. Anywhere I click, I get the location of that point, right? And I mean, it's very easy to build this with any Python, with HTML, JavaScript. It's not a genius idea. But what's cool is I can export whatever point I click on the screen with as a CSV. That's pretty cool. And I can choose a screenshot. So I can load up the screenshot, for example, here of contact information. And then I can locate, and this would be something I would use to train this model or to evolve the model. There's probably something people are doing that's kind of similar. And I would look at these locations. I would say, okay, this is cool. So here I have question, and then email, and then address, and then phone number, and then comments, right? And then you see all the points are here, so I can export them as a CSV, area, screen, time, etc. So now I have like that CSV over there. So what I can do here is I can come over here. I can go to my downloads folder. I can get the CSV, locations, one.csv. This would be like locs.csv. Yeah. And now that I have that, I'm going to go back here to my copy structure, whatever, to my Jupyter notebook where I was trying to get the points. There you go. Now I'm just going to delete this for now. And I'm going to load the points from the CSV. I guess I have Pandas installed. Let me see if I have Pandas installed. No, I don't, but we can install that real quick. Requirements.in. I'm going to go Pandas over here. I'm going to say make env update, which is going to update my environment with Pandas. It's pretty cool. And now I can probably use Pandas. I'm going to import CSV, and this is going to give me the locs.csv. And then we can take a look, and we're going to see the locations that we generated with that fancy little app that I just built. Nice. So now we have the relative positions, but what we're looking for is the screen positions. So screen X and screen Y, right? So we want to get all of those screen X and screen Y positions and put that into a list, into a nested list. So that's pretty easy to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to say points is equal to, there you go. And then points, screen X and screen Y. Oh, screen Y. That's it. There you go. So now with these locations, we can try that again and see if it works a little bit better. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locations, right? And we have as forms inputs. I can take a look. Form inputs should be forms inputs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, the first one is kind of a mistake. It's not the actual thing that I wanted to import, because if we go to the contact forms over here, and where is it? Contact information. There you go. So we have Lucas forms, question, email, address, phone number, comments. So that should be Lucas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I just want question, email, address, phone number, comments. Yeah, I guess question, there's no question, so whatever. I'm just going to say question is, what is the best way to learn AI? Something like that. All right. So I'm going to process the forms inputs again. Beautiful. We got question, email, address, phone number, and the comment. That's very cool. So now we have that. We have all the points. We have the right form inputs now. And now we're going to try to automate the text input. And this is clearly something that should be evolved, because, for example, right now, the way I'm doing it, if I move the browser just a little bit, that already fucks up location, right? Sorry for cursing. That already jeopardizes the location. So that's something that should be arranged. But if I have my mouse over here and I'm going to run the script here on my left, we're getting the location kind of bad. That's pretty bad. That's okay. We're going to try it again. As you can see, this is the issue that I was facing when generating this with, even when I generated directly on that app that I was making. However, if I come over here and I do, okay, so I have to be 100%. Yes. And now here, I'm going to get the screenshot again, just to see if we can actually get this to work properly. And now I'm going to come over here to my Jupyter notebook. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the screenshot that I just generated. And this is the screenshot that we just generated. I'm going to move it to my current folder, assets, contact form google.png. Yeah, I'm going to replace it. And now that I have it over there, I'm going to try to see if at least with this app, I can actually get those locations correctly. Then in the future, I'm going to put this in GitHub if you want to check it out. And in the future, you can go in and maybe improve it. Who knows? Maybe this works properly at some point. Contact from without Google. For some reason, that is not letting me import my screenshot. There you go. Contact form. There you go. So now I can access here. So I can say, okay, where is, so question, email, address, phone number, comments. So I get all these locations. I export as a CSV. I'm pretty sure this is not like an ideal, super ideal workflow, but you know, we're trying, we're getting there. So we get the locations. And now I go back to cursor and I move the locations to the right folder. So recorded locations 1. So for some reason, apparently the right file was not there. So let me just check in. Let me just see if I copy file. There you go. Oh, that's very bad. Let's see, recorded locations. Yeah, this is the right location. Sorry, it's the locations one. All right. So move. Yeah, that works, I think. Downloads, record, location 1. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. And now we get the points again, and let's see if that actually works better now. Okay, the locations are clearly different. Yes, we have the correct form inputs, we have the locations, and now we're gonna test that again and see if at least with this help, we get the locations right. And then in the future, I want the Gemini detected locations to actually match this. So maybe train it in a better way, something like that. But now I just wanna see if this thing actually works a little bit better. Still gets a little bit to the left. That's very annoying. Folks, it's a pretty fun experiment to do. I'm going to have all the code here on GitHub so that you can play around and experiment. But this is a pretty cool project, right? I think that's a pretty cool idea. And the idea essentially being that in theory, you could get any type of form and apply either directly play around with HTML by building a Chrome extension or an add-on, etc. Or the one that I think is kind of more fascinating is this idea of working with screenshots. Obviously, you're going to face issues with dealing with different proportions, ratios, displays, resolutions, different screens, and a bunch of issues that are very annoying. But I was kind of like interested in this. I was even playing around with this table form where I can edit different columns and then try to see how well Gemini detects these locations, right? So I could generate whatever column I want with different examples and so on. So I can resize the table. I can increase the number of rows and columns here and then play around with this. Thanks for watching, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time.